Hello, hello, hello. All right. So, guys, um let's talk about something different. No. Um, there's a news a few yesterday yata na nangyari. Yesterday ba? Yeah, yesterday binombahan ng Iran ang Israel. And you see it in TikTok and in YouTube, yung mga missiles, no, na na-intercept ng Iron Dome ng Israel, at meron din talagang nakapasok, no, at tumama sa Tel Aviv. Alright, so pag-usapan po natin ito kasi I think marami sa atin ang gustong makialam, gustong malaman kung ano ba talaga ang conflict, no? Ano ang cause? Religion ba ang cause? O iba pala ang cause? Is it a prophecy na matagal ng prophecy ba ito na talagang inevitable na mangyayari? Ano ba ang story dito sa Palestine na issue at saka sa Israel? Kasi ako po dati hindi dati, noong naging atheist ako and doon sa angry face ko, parang kapag may mga conflict, kapag may mga giyera, kapag may mga patayan, yung laging nabibida is yung Muslim. This is just me, I'm not being Islamophobe. It's just me expressing yung mga pananaw ko dati. So noong mga early 2000, parang nakakakita ako ng pattern na palagi kayo ang nagpapatayan, nag-aaway. Even dito sa Pilipinas, sa Mindanao, mga Muslim at saka Kristiyano yung nagpapatayan. It's always the religious people, no? So ako na hindi nagre-research, ako na nanonood lang sa news at nagfa-follow lang sa news at hindi nagre-research after ko mapanood yung news, gumagawa ng konklusyon yung utak ko. Ang gulo talaga ng mundo pag mayroong religion. Kaya parang nag-a-agree ako doon sa kanta ni John Lennon, yung Imagine, na mas peaceful siguro ang mundo kung wala ang religion, kasi it's division, it's making people nagdi-divide siya ng mga tao, extreme yung views ng kanya-kanyang mga religions. Even for example, the Christian denomination itself is divided into multiple na faiths. So isa lang naman sana ang Diyos, pero ang dami-daming kanya-kanyang interpretasyon, no? Kaya siguro nagkakagulo, kaya siguro nagpapatayan. That's the common na napupuntahan talaga ng common na tao. Isa akong common na tao. Pero when I try to investigate dito sa mismong issue sa I don't know about the issue about the whole Middle East, pero dito sa issue pala ng Palestine, hindi pala simpleng religion na away lang. Hindi pala ito religious war na naiisip ko dati. It's not that simple pala. It's a war pala na typical war, no? It's grabbing resources, it's getting resources, it's driving people away kasi gusto kong tumira sa lupa na yan. So let's start at the very beginning po, sa history ng mga Jew, kasi sila ang nakasentro dito, ang Israel. Ang Israel is composed of Jewish people. So dati at siguro during the biblical times, 70 CE or even 2000 CE, there were already kingdoms na kagaya ng Jewish kingdom, no? And even though there were already, and doon sila nakaset up sa Jerusalem or sa Israel, doon sila, area ng Palestine, hindi sila kasing makapangyarihan ng mga other makapangyarihan na mga empires dati. Kasabay nila kasi ang Greeks, kasabay nila ang Romans, kasabay nila ang Persians, kasabay nila ang Babylonians, pero hindi sila kasing mas makapangyarihan sa mga empires at that time. So they have already some sort of like a nation or a community or a kingdom, but they weren't as powerful. They were the Jews na nakatira doon sa Israel, sa Palestine na area, and sa Jerusalem majority. Yun, no? They don't have any kind of power. Meron silang power, but even makikita nyo po kung gaano pala ka-powerful ang weapon nila. Kasi ito po yung hindi man nila ito nagamit for the longest time na naaapi sila as Jewish, as Jew people, naging makapangyarihan sila eventually. So you'll see that later, but what I mean is yung weapon nila is yung story nila, no? Romans have the money and the resources and the military power, but they don't have a story like the Jewish people have. What they have is a story told in a mythical fashion na sila ang chosen people. They are chosen by their God, the God, and sila yung mga special, and they have a promised land. No, ito yung story na dramatize through sa Bible, which is the Old Testament, no? Na sila ang special, sila ang chosen, and yeah, it's called the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament. At some point sa history natin, sa around 70 CE, na-conquer sila. Kasi at that time, hindi pa established ang like mga leaders of the nations, no? Kanya-kanyang kanya-kanyang nakawan ng mga lupa dati. Kung makapangyarihan ka, maa-acquire mo ang isang lupa na hindi masyadong makapangyarihan. So ito na nga, nangyari na nga, na-conquer sila ng Romans during the 70 CE. Kaya nagkawatak-watak yung mga Jew, no? Ang iba napunta sa marami sa kanila ang napunta sa Europe, no? But most of them napunta sa iba't ibang parte ng mundo. And ang nakasanayan nila na majority sila sa kanilang own na society, isa din naging minority sila sa other societies, no? Napunta sila sa Russia, hindi naman majority doon ay Jew, majority naman doon ay Christians. So naging minority sila, no? But at that time known ang mga Christians na nagpoprotekta sa mga Jews, because there's this like parang may story, connecting ang story ng dalawa dahil sa Old Testament nagbunga ang New Testament in a way konektado ang dalawa So in a way pinoprotektahan ng mga Christians ang mga Jews, but at the same time parang nadidiskrimina din sila for various reasons from other cultures and other beliefs na tinitirhan nila. So for example, sa Russia, merong mga Christians doon, but hindi lahat Christian, nadidiskrimina sila sa mga Russians na hindi Kristiyano, na iba ang belief at iba ang kultura. No? For whatever reason. They have their reasons at nadidiskrimina sila. Yun. Fast forward tayo sa 16th century, ilang thousands years later, no, 1,600 years later, nag-shift po ang politics natin, no, from religiously dominated na mga policies na galing sa religion yung turo tsaka ginawang law at kaya ifa-follow ng mga tao mo, naging naging mas economic centered tayo, no? Yung mga leaders natin parang wala naman akong pakialam sa religion, ang gusto ko is yumaman at magkapera, at eto yung opportunity na magkapera, i-welcome ko kayo lahat, pasok kayo dito sa country ko, magtrabaho kayo dito para umasenso tayo, maging prosperous yung nation natin. So nagiging nagiging parang bagong idea yon, kasi natulak siya kasi may mga bagong imbento din, no? May tawag doon, na invento na sa 16th century ang baril. And I think ang communication technology is na invento na rin. May double check ko, baka mali ako, pero nag-improve yung communication natin and transportation, meron na tayong baril. So nag-shift yung politics, no? Instead of yung policies natin is based on nakasentro sa religion, suddenly nakasentro siya sa economy, no? We no longer see religious difference as a hindrance. Dati kasi kapag inahalo-halo natin yung mga religion, magiging problema 'yun. Kaya as much as possible, kanya-kanya tayo, doon ka Muslim, doon ka Kristiyano, doon ka Jew. But now nagiging mas secular tayo. Naiisip na ng mga leaders natin na pwede naman mag-coexist ang kanya-kanyang mga beliefs, no? Basta common lang yung goal natin. Ang goal natin, which is gawin natin prosperous yung buhay natin, maging wealthy tayo. So naka-benefit po ang mga Jews, no? Nagkawatak-watak man sila after nung kinonquer ng Romans. Imagine that's 1,600 years ang lumipas. Nagkawatak-watak sila. Imagine what kind of world would that be for the Jews? What kind of life ang meron sila 1,600 years later nang na-conquer sila. Nagkawatak-watak man sila, naging benefit itong bagong shift ng politics sa kanila kasi welcome sila. Nadidiskrimina man sila sa mga lugar na tinitirhan nila kasi iba sila, hindi sila Kristiyano, hindi sila Muslim. Iba yung religion nila, minority pa sila, naka-benefit sila dito. Suddenly welcome sila. Pasok kayo dito, Jew. Wala kaming pake kung Jew ka. Dito ka magtrabaho. So, ini-encourage ng mga European leaders na mag-migrate kayo dito. Dito na kayo tumira. Magtrabaho kayo dito. Yun po ang parang shift, no? Economy-centered tayo. Then came the 18th century na mas naging enlightened pa tayo. If that's how you see it, mas naging enlightened tayo. Na dito pumasok yung idea about nationalism na nag-start sa France, no? Sa France. Nag-shift yung way of thinking natin, us as an identity, no? Me as an identity. Dati kasi, even though for example, may France na dati, even way back 18th century, meron ng France po. Meron ng king sa France. People don't call themselves French because they don't see it as an identity. They're not French people. Nasa level lang ang thinking nila sa kung saan maliit na village sila nakatira or town or region. Yun lang yung identity nila. So for example, ako na taga Butuan, let's say tao ako in the 18th century and let's say meron ng Butuan City. I think meron ng Butuan meron ng Butuan City. The Kingdom of Butuan, let's say. Meron ng Philippines. Meron na ding Philippines. But I don't consider myself as a Filipino way back. Kasi there's no concept of nationalism. More on, I'm a Butuanon. No, I'm a Butuanon and I'm loyal to my king, which is a king in Butuan, not the king siguro in the Philippines. So, yun po ang shift na nangyari sa 18th century, no? From nasa maliliit na level lang yung identity ko to becoming a national na identity, no? Na isa na akong Filipino, hindi na ako isang Butuanon lang. Hindi na ako isang Katoliko lang. Hindi na yung identity ko is yung religion ko. No, identity ko is sa national na level. So, yun nga, if merong mang king dati sa Pilipinas, hindi ako loyal sa Pilipinas, kundi loyal ako sa king. No? Unlike today, na hindi ka na loyal sa presidente mo unless we are more loyal to the Philippines. Yun po ang shift actually. Ito po yung shift na nangyayari, na hindi na tayo loyal sa mga tao, loyal na tayo sa nation, sa lupa. In short, wala tayong konsepto ng unified na nation dati. Kaya nga, even though kanya-kanya tayo ng mga languages sa Pilipinas, I have to learn Tagalog. Kasi it's our national language. Tinuturo siya actually sa elementary, no? We have to learn Tagalog. Yun po ang ibig sabihin ng nationality, no? Na madududahan yung loyalty ko, or madududahan ang loyalty ng isang city sa Philippines kung dinidiscourage niya yung pagturo ng wikang Filipino. Madududahan ka, hey, are you still a Filipino, or are you something else already? Are you an occupier? Are you an infiltrator? Madududahan ako, di ba? Or madududahan ang city kung ganoon yung ugali niya. So, hindi pa naman yan nangyayari sa Pilipinas. Walang ganoon po. Kasi we are united, no? Lahat ng mga cities is sinusunod yung national na law. Kaya nga mayroong panatang makabayan, iniibig ko ang Pilipinas, mga ganon, di ba? We swear allegiance to the Philippine flag. Yan po. So, while nag-move on na ang mundo sa nationalist kind of thinking, yung mga Jews ay nahati-hati yung kinds of Jews, no? They're still Jews, pero because of the shift, nagkahati-hati sila. Merong mga Jews na traditionalists. They believe na they will return to Zion one day, pero it is through divine guidance, and merong Messiah daw na dadating, and maghintay lang tayo sa Messiah na yun at dadating tayo doon sa promised land natin. Yun yung mga traditionalist. Meron ding mga religious reformers. They believe na yung beliefs nila kailangan nilang i-drop kung gusto nilang bumalik sa Zion. Sorry mali. Yung mga religious reformers na mga Jews, they believe na some of their beliefs need to be dropped, including their belief na makakabalik, or including their wish na makakabalik pa sila sa Zion, no? They treat the Old Testament as a moral guidance lang. So in a way, para silang hindi na sila fundamentalist, no? They're called reformers. They're still Jews, pero they treat the book as a guide. No, it's a moral guide lang to become a better person, not really something you need to take literally or seriously. No, that's what I understand with these religious reformers. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then there's this assimilationists, no? Mga taong nakiki-assimilate. No, you hear that often now kasi maraming I don't know if yung feed mo is about Filipinos being appreciated abroad. Yun kasi yung mga lumalabas sa sa TikTok feed ko, na napapansin ko na mas magaling maki-assimilate ang Pinoy sa iba't ibang bansa na dinatrabahuan nila, unlike other races, which is yung Indian race, which is yun yung mga lumalabas din na content sa sinasabi ng mga foreigners na mahirap mag-assimilate yung mga Arabs at saka yung mga Indians pag nakatungtong na sila sa Europe, kasi dinadala pa din nila yung culture and belief and yung which is I think hindi naman malino kung dadalhin mo yung belief mo, pero meron kasing laws, meron kasing ibang bansa na kasi yun and you have to follow their rules, their culture, their way of life. You need to assimilate. Yun na nga yung term, assimilate. And from what I observed lang personally lang, magaling ang Pinoy. Because first is Katoliko ang Pinoy. Yan siguro yung main. Pinalaki tayong Katoliko, and majority sa other nations ay Katoliko. No, siguro mas na-accept tayo agad. Kasi ito yung belief natin and common sa other European countries or sa America, sa other Asian countries. And then yung Filipino culture natin din, hindi ganoon ka strong, no? Kasi 300 years tayong ni-rape ng mga Spaniards. That's my term, no? So siguro ganoon tayo ka obedient, ka respectful, ka gentle, ka kind, kasi ilang years tayong ni-rape. No, parang ganoon ang naging resulta, no, nilubog tayo sa lupa ng 300 years, kaya ganito tayo. I don't know, that's just me. Pero siguro ganoon yung nangyari, no, na madali tayo maka-assimilate talaga. Mas pleasing tayo sa other nations kasi yun nga yung culture natin and all, hindi invasive. So yun po ang other type ng other Jews. No, they try to assimilate, no? They nationally identify, for example, as a German, pero religiously they are Jew, no? They can assimilate, no? So pwede silang yun na nga, pwede silang by nationality Filipino and religiously Jewish. That's assimilation. And meron ngang nag-fully assimilate and no longer call himself na Jewish. And he is very famous. Siya ay si Karl Marx, no? Nag-assimilate na siya fully. So dito sa 18th century dito din nagsimula ang mga anti-Semitic views because of our concept of nationalism, and because some Jews or majority of the Jews can't assimilate, no? Can't assimilate. That's the reason doon nagsimula yung anti-Semitic views. Anti-Semitic meaning may prejudice or may hatred towards the Jews for no reason at all, just because they're Jews. Yun, anti-Semitic. Kasi noong naging common na ang nationalism, you're expected to behave in a certain way. You're expected to speak in a certain way kung saang nation ka nakatira. So for example, sa Pilipinas, kung Tagalog ang language natin sa Luzon at marunong din ang mga taga Mindanao ng Tagalog, then it's nagiging questionable kung may isang maliit na town sa Visayas na iba ang pananalita, na iba ang beliefs, na iba ang at hindi siya nagfi-fit, no, sa kung ano ang beliefs at pananalita ng karamihan. No, yun po ang example. Na in short, questionable yung membership ng Jews sa country na tinitirhan niya. Questionable yung membership niya. Are you really a German kung nakatira ka dito sa Germany, or are you a Jew first? No, kasi I can't work with you if my aim is for the betterment of the German people and your aim is different, not for the betterment of the German people but for the Jews. So yun po ang tingin, kaya merong nagsisimula na yung anti-Semitic view. So nagiging questionable sila, naki-question yung loyalty nila. So while hindi naman iniipit ang mga Jews na umasenso sa kanilang diskarte sa buhay, mas naging widespread lang ang distrust sa kanila. Kasi ang argument nila is this: hindi fully legitimate members ang Jews sa society nila kasi nga hindi sila nag-a-assimilate according to the people's standards. No? Therefore, Jews have no right na magkaroon ng kapangyarihan or influence over the society they belong in. So yun na po yung parang hindi racism, discrimination and hatred towards them. No? So, in the 19th century, doon na nagsimula ang Zionism. Now, Zionism is yung kagustuhang bumalik sa Promised Land. Lahat ng Jews dapat bumalik sa Promised Land. Yun yung Zionism. But there's a better description for that. Let me just type it. What is Zionism? What is Zionism? Okay. Is a political and nationalist movement that began in the 19th century with the goal of creating a Jewish homeland in the historic land of Israel. Ito pala, sorry. So, ito yung best na description sa kanya. No, balik sa Promised Land, creating our own national na home. Kasi for the longest time, imagine, nung kinonquer sila ng Romans dati, for the longest time, Jews have been living as a minority. They don't have, wala silang tawag doon. They try to assimilate but they can't assimilate kasi nga they are Jews first. They have a strong belief with their God. They have their own culture. They have their own rituals and all na magmumukhang weird talaga. Iba pa yung damit nila, iba pa yung hair nila, iba pa yung pananalita nila. So it's like if you ask them to assimilate, parang hindi malabong mangyari talaga. So for the longest time, a lot of Jews try to assimilate, hindi nag-work, nadi-discriminate pa din sila. Yun. Then this came, yun na nga, yung 19th century, nagka-idea sila na parang hindi talaga mag-work. Hindi talaga mag-work na mag-a-assimilate lang tayo. Hindi mag-work ito. Even if we try to assimilate, they will still discriminate us. So ito yung nakamap nila naisip ito yung nakamap ni Leon Pinsker, no? During the early 19th century. Si Leon Pinsker, sabi niya, we can't assimilate to the nations we reside. No? We can't. Tayo na hindi nag-assimilate sa mga nations na tinitirhan natin are not accepted. No? Hindi tayo accepted sa mga nation. In short, si Pinsker can no longer, hindi na natin kayang mag-rely pa na ang nation na tinitirhan natin ay mapoprotektahan tayo. Hindi na tayo napoprotektuhan ng nation kung saan tayo natitira, at hindi na maaasahan ang nation na tinitirhan natin na tingnan tayo as equal. They will view us as equals. No, it will never happen. Ito sabi ni Pinsker. So, ito yung propose niya na solusyon. So, ito yung na-propose na solusyon na kailangan daw ng mga Jews na i-reassert ang sarili nila as a national group. No? But to be fair kay Pinsker, initially, hindi naman niya gustong i-conquer or i-claim back ang Jerusalem or ang Palestine. No? Hindi naman sa gusto nilang i-reclaim ang Holy Land. Ang gusto lang ni Pinsker initially is a piece of land na doon titira ang lahat ng mga Jews na nagkalat sa buong mundo, at meron silang own na national identity. Meron silang Jewish na country or nation na they can manage themselves, at wala nang magdi-discriminate sila. They don't have to assimilate kasi kapwa Jews na yung nakatira doon. Yun yung gusto nila. Pero eventually, nakumbinsi si Pinsker ng mga kasamahan niyang Jew na pumili ng lugar kung saan sila pwedeng mag-reside freely away from Jewish persecution and discrimination. At ang napili nila ay yung lugar na what they believed was promised to them by God. Yun na nga, yun yung Palestine. No? So, let's go back. They were initially driven out. They were driven out from kung saan sila nakatira. No, doon sila nakatira. Na-conquer sila ng Romans, and for thousands of years nagkalat-kalat sila, and then suddenly napaisip sila sa 19th century na hindi talaga magwo-work na makiki-assimilate tayo. We have to have a land, and that land is the Palestinian land. We need that. I need that. We need to establish our Jewish nation there. Now, you have to ask this. Is history equal to ownership? Kapag may history ka sa lupa, ibig ba sabihin sa'yo talaga yun? At kailangang ibigay sa'yo ng mga Palestinians ang lupa na yun kasi may historical claim ka? Ganun po ba nag-work ang modern na society? That's just a question, no, na for you na you can think through. Pero for me, I don't think history equals ownership. Kasi kung ifa-follow natin yung kung saan pupunta itong gusto ng mga Zionist, kukunin nila yung lupa sa mga taong hindi naman mga conqueror, mga nakatira na ito sa sa Palestine. Hindi naman sila ang sumakop hindi naman sila yung kumbaga mga Palestinians ito hindi ito mga Romans diba? So if they want to kung gawin na lang natin comedic ang story, if they want to rest back or if they want to like do a revenge, then hindi sana sa Palestine yung revenge nila, doon sana sa Roma, no? Mag-back sila doon sa Romans if they have this grudge against the Romans. Pero hindi po yun, hindi grudge against the humans ang nangyayari. Gusto nilang kunin yung lupa na nakuha sa kanila ng Romans, na hindi na naman Romans ang nagmamay-ari, mga Palestinians na mga anak-anak na ang Palestinians ay hindi naman mga Katoliko lang or mga Arabs lang or mga Kristiyano lang or mga Jews lang. They're a combination of many religions. Palestinians doesn't mean Muslim land. No, it's not composed of, even though it's majority Muslims, but it's composed of Muslims, it's composed of Jews and Christians. Halo-halo doon. And walang for the longest time walang agawan ng lupa doon sa Palestina, no? Namuhay ng, even though iba-iba ang beliefs ng mga tao doon sa Palestine, walang ganoon na klase na war na nangyayari now ang Palestine, no? So yun po, yun na ang kagustuhan nilang makuha, yung Palestine. Yun yung mga Zionist. And in order for them to make Palestine into their Jewish national home, Jews have to start immigrating there. Now, they would have to start immigrating there for them to colonize it with Jews. So in 1884, they came together for their first conference. Yung mga first na nag-idea about Zionism, about a national home for the Jews, nagrupo-grupo. And they're not composed of thousands. There are a few people, maybe about hundreds of people. And si Pinsker ay na-elect, yung sinabi ko na si Pinsker na nag-idea about having a national na land, siya ang inelect as president, and he preached the need to return to the soil, meaning return to the promised land. So it's a small group of people moving and settling in Palestine in a process they called Aliyah, a Hebrew word for meaning ascent. Now in this context, ascent meaning ascent to the Holy Land. So Palestine at that time in 1884, Palestine at that time was populated for about 380,000 people. Now less than 10% of them were Jewish. So minority ang Jew sa Palestine. And there were a lot of Christians at that time as well. But of course, majority, the population is mostly Muslim. Kasi yun nga, napalibutan Middle East napalibutan ng mga Muslim diba? Nasa gitna yata ang Palestine between Egypt and Syria. So they are Muslims, right? So yun, majority pa din Muslim, pero yun, halo-halo ang mga tao na nasa Palestine. And at that time, Palestine was under the Ottoman Empire. Kaso mahina ang development sa Palestine. For example, noong first dumating ang mga Zionist sa Palestine, ang dami nilang reklamo. So una, bago pa yung kalsada na ginawa, galing sila sa Europe, meaning very well, yung parang background nila is galing sila sa isang society na very advanced and very high tech, and dito 10 years ago lang nagawa itong kalsada. So very primitive kumbaga sa kanilang standard sa mga Jew, no, na ang kalsada 10 years ago pa na build, no. Nadismaya sila sa kung ano gaano ka low tech at gaano ka depressing ang buhay sa kanilang standard ang Palestine. Para sa kanila, hindi man lang inilagaan ng government or ginovern ng maayos. Yung isa nga nag-comment na ano daw, pat ang bahay nila dito gawa sa putik. Walang bintana. May mga hayop pang nakitira kasama yung mga tao sa loob ng hut. Mga basura nagkalat. Mga batang walang damit nagtatakbuhan. At gumagamit pa sila ng grinder sa pagproseso ng wheat So napaka very very primitive na mga tao ang nandito, very primitive yung technology. That's coming from a person who came from Europe, kasi na Europeanize itong mga Jews eh. So sobrang taas ng standard nila. And yun na nga, yun yung napansin niya sa Palestine. So, and at the same time, it is a perfect din at that time na ma-occupy ng mga Jews or ng mga Zionists ang Palestine. Kasi while nationalism, yun nga na-mention ko, nationalism was slowly being adopted among nations, Palestinians on the other hand had not yet formed as an identity group. So nakatira pa din sila sa idea na ako, Muslim ako, or taga dito ako na village, I'm from the water village, I'm from the fire village. Ganun pa din yung thinking ng mga Palestinians daw dati. Kaya parang perfect siya na opportunity to occupy. Kasi yun na nga, makaluma, hindi pa sila nation na unoriented. But other neighboring towns or nations, napapansin na ang pagdagsa ng mga Jew. So the Arabs saw it as a colonization, as an invasion. Papansin nila ito. So wala silang pakiya sa Arabs. So they don't care about what the problems Jews have with Europe. All they know is they have a home. Ito yung home nila, and their home is being taken. And that's exactly what the Zionist movement is, di ba? Reclaim our land, take our land back. So yun na nga, napatanong ako kanina na, is history equal to ownership? If you have a historical claim, do you own it? And if you have ownership to it, i-drive away mo ba yung hundreds of thousands of people na tumira dyan, no? For the longest time, na wala namang conflict, na wala namang patayan, no? Na namuhay lang naman ng mapayapa, hindi ka naman inaaway, and suddenly, okay, your time is up, alis na kayo dyan. Kasi amin yan, or historically. Ganun po ba ang sistema natin? So yun po, nag-take action, merong nag-take action legally. Kasi yun nga, may widespread na nakawa ng lupa ng mga Zionist. I call it Zionist kasi iba ang Zionist sa Jew eh. Meron namang Jew na hindi Zionist eh. So Zionist, no, nag-take action legally na yung Ottoman Sultan at that time. Pero hindi pa kasi masyado established yung law at that time, at maraming loopholes, and common pa ang bribery, and with all of that, all of these things combined, diba, slowly but surely nagsimula na talaga ang Jewish colonization sa Palestine. Doon nagsimula ang Jewish colonization sa Palestine. But eto yung problem, no? Meron ng mga extremist na Zionist na tawag dito, nagre-risk talaga kasi may risk eh. Titira ka sa lugar na hindi sayo, titira ka sa lugar na majority Muslim, not safe. Hindi isa pang problema, hindi siya developed, low tech, ang daming kulang, walang ospital na maayos, walang kalsada na maayos, and magre-risk talaga kung tumira doon. And yun na nga yung problema. Most Jews wanted to live where they were, to assimilate where they were. So, sobrang layo ng Palestine pa kung saan sila nakatira. So tas yun na nga, underdeveloped yung Palestine, unsafe pa for them as a Jew living in a country na most majority iba yung belief, no? Yung idea na they will gain political autonomy there seemed ridiculous, no? Parang ang sarap sana, siguro nag-i-imagine na yung ibang Jew na ang sarap sana, no? Pero parang ang ridiculous naman na pupunta tayo doon at saka magiging hindi na tayo discriminated and we're finally free and we finally have our own Jewish nation. Ridiculous para sa kanila yon. Sinong Jew ang magre-risk ng sarili nila, including their family, para pumunta doon? Sinong Jew ang susuporta sa Zionism if ang kabayaran noon is more discrimination sa lugar nila? So yun po. So yun yung story, no, na doon nag-start ang colonization. Doon nag-start ang pag-grab nila slowly sa Palestine like it's their own, no? Na not considering na meron nang nakatira doon, na meron ng imagine 1,000 plus years na ilang generations kaya ang tumira doon na mga Christians, na mga Jews, ng mga Muslims, ang suddenly i-drive away mo away. Meron talagang friction na mangyari. Meron talagang pushback. Kaya nga eto na nga yung conflict ngayon. And for the longest time po, since the Jews started taking over Palestine, a lot of Palestinians yung mga nakikita kasi natin sa news usually papatayan na yung Hamas na, but we don't really know ano pala yung talagang nangyayari. There were protests pala na non-violent protests. Meron palang mga I'll show you, no? I'll show you a video na lang and let's watch together. It's a video called Life in Occupied Palestine by Anna Baltzer. It's available in YouTube. And let's watch this together na lang. Kasi ito na po yung nangyayari for the occupied Palestine. Anong ginawa ng mga Israeli, or no, not Israel. Anong ginawa ng Israel sa mga taong nakatira na sa Palestine, no? Na walang kinalaman wala naman silang kinalaman sa Roman took over, no? Roman conqueror. That was thousands of years ago. I bet they don't even know that happened unless they were taught it in school. No, thousands of years ago, ano bang kinalaman ko doon? But suddenly ako ang mabibiktima, 'di ba? Ganun po yung konteksto eh. So let's watch this. Let's watch this.
Non-violent resistance to
Ito.
Which is based in the West Bank, and basically we do two things. First of all, we're there to document human rights abuses in the region, and second of all, we're there to support non-violent resistance to the occupation. And I'll be telling you more about what this occupation looks like in the presentation, but before I do so, just a little bit about myself. I'm a Jewish American, and I originally got into this work when I was living in Turkey, and I would take trips through the Middle East during my vacations. I was in Iran, in Syria, and Lebanon, and along my way I was taken in by families, many of them Palestinian refugees, and through my friendships with these people that I met along the way, I began to hear for the first time a whole different sort of version of the history and present of Israel and Palestine, utterly different from anything that I'd ever learned growing up as a Jewish American. And I was very disturbed, alarmed by what I heard. I didn't believe it. I thought it was all propaganda. But it sort of planted a seed, and I began to do some of my own research and eventually decided to go to Palestine to see with my own eyes what was happening. And that's when I took my first trip to Palestine. And that's what I'd like to tell you about, is what I found when I got there. I'm not here to give sort of a sweeping analysis of the entire history of the conflict. I'm not here to give every single perspective on the issue. I'm here to give my perspective as a Jewish American who spent 5 months working in the West Bank. Now, when I first got to Palestine, there were, of course, many sort of surprises along the way, but one of the first ones was just aesthetically the way Palestine looked. I guess I'd imagined the Middle East to be sort of rolling sand dunes, barren desert land, and when I got there, I realized that Palestine was actually very beautiful. This is a picture showing Palestine.
Medyo pixelated lang pero ang ganda niya tingnan. There's a lot of greens and very clean. And of course, hindi naman lahat ng country perfect, no, but this is my impression din sa Middle East, no. I was also thinking na ang Palestine is just sand, walang tubig, parang ganun. So it's just our mga kaignorantihan natin. But ito pala yung itsura ng Palestine. And I would love to travel there someday pag wala ng gulo. Ang ang isa din na gusto kong puntahan is Pakistan. Yeah, Pakistan.
Palestine in the springtime, you can see how fertile and green the land is. But beyond showing how beautiful it is, I actually think that this photograph captures what I have come to believe is really at the heart of the Israel-Palestine conflict. A lot of people have sort of a perception of this issue as being kind of an age-old rivalry between Jews and Muslims, something that's been going on for thousands of years and will continue.
Same sentiment, no, na akala natin na it's a religious long na historical na war, na religious war
for thousands more, because at its heart are these sort of deep religious differences. And one of the first realizations that I came to when I got to Palestine was that, for the most part, this really is not a war about religion. This is a war about land, about water, about resources. And I hope that my reasons for coming to those conclusions will be clear in this presentation. Now, to get you oriented, here's a map of the Middle East. Israel and Palestine are located in the Middle East. That tiny little purple and white sliver there, here's a larger version of that map. And the beige areas in this map indicate the de facto internationally recognized borders of the State of Israel. Meanwhile, the pink areas on the right and left are the two land masses making up the Palestinian territories occupied in 1967. And they are, on the left, the Gaza Strip, and on the right, the West Bank. And I was living in a village in the West Bank, and the photographs and stories from this presentation were taken from the West Bank. So, as I said, these are known as the occupied Palestinian territories. Occupied, what does that word mean, right? Well, the purpose of my presentation is to tell you about this occupation. And the first part of my talk is just explaining the structures of the occupation. What is it composed of? I'll be talking about restricted movement, checkpoints and roadblocks. I'll be talking about settlements and outposts. I'll be talking about the wall. And I'll be talking about imprisonment. And once we have sort of a general understanding about what the system itself looks like, I'll be talking about how are people reacting, how are people resisting. And the next part of my talk then will be about resistance. I'll be talking about everyday nonviolent resistance. I'll be talking in particular about demonstrations. And I have a section as well on Israeli activism.
Before we proceed, parang hindi ko na-emphasize doon sa story ko about the struggles ng mga Jews after noong na-conquer sila ng Romans. Hindi ko na-emphasize kung gaano kalala ang anti-Semitic na mga hatred towards them. They were even killed, no? Meron ngang mga patayan, meron nga, I forgot to mention the details, but there were details about how hateful the European people were towards the Jews, no? At ilang years yon, and we have to take that into consideration, bakit napunta talaga sa ganitong klaseng thinking din ang mga Zionist, kasi yun na nga, pero yun na nga, ilang years din silang nag-struggle to assimilate, ilang years silang nag-struggle to try to assimilate, pero hindi pa din, nadidiskrimina pa din sila, hindi pa din sila natatrust. Meron ngang issue no, I forgot the actual details, pero merong isang high-ranking official na dinududahan, kasi Jew siya, dinudahan na baka siya yung naglaglag sa leader nila, kaya ganoon ang nangyari, simply because he is a Jew. Pero napatunayan later na hindi pala niya ginawa yun, hindi pala siya nagtraidor. Pero yun na nga, because na convicted siya, ang daming parang riots na nangyari, mga patayan, parang diniscriminate na naman sila, na drive away na naman yung mga Jew. So for many years nag-struggle talaga sila, and that's because they are minority, they can't assimilate, iba yung beliefs nila sa kung ano ang majority. So we have to take that into consideration as well para makuha natin yung whole picture.
So to get started with restricted movement. In the Palestinian territories, there are both Palestinians and Israelis living there, but they use different roads. There are Palestinian roads, there are Israeli roads. Palestinian roads tend to be older, often even unusable, like the one you see in this photograph. Israeli roads tend to be more modern, constructed by the Israeli government for Israeli citizens living in these territories, and they might be sort of four-lane highways like the one you see in this photograph. Palestinians are not allowed to use the Israeli roads unless they're able to obtain a kind of permit, in which case they might be able to use, say, a certain section of a certain road, but in all other cases, the roads are segregated.
So guys, segregated roads daw po. May daanan lang para sa mga Palestinians, which is crunchy ang road, very rough road. And yung sa sementado sa mga Jewish na roads. So it's segregated. And if you ever man na need mo talagang ikaw as a Palestinian, need mong mag-ride doon sa paved na road, you have to go through kailangan mo daw magkuha ng permit.
Palestinians and Israelis use different colored license plates. Palestinian cars have green or white colored plates, meanwhile Israeli cars have yellow colored plates. And this is so it's easy to see from afar whether a vehicle is carrying Palestinians or Israelis. And it also makes it easier for the soldiers who are manning the area to monitor who is using which roads. So for example, here you can see an army jeep pulling over all green or white plated vehicles to the side of a road, meanwhile all yellow plated vehicles are allowed to pass by unhindered on the left. And this is called a checkpoint. And checkpoints are a major institution in the occupation. They are essentially barriers manned by soldiers or border police that
Pause ko lang parang talaga hindi talaga, yun nga, no? Yung mindset nila is nakafocus talaga to one thing. Drive away everyone and let's just be Jewish centered. Yun nga, nakasegregate yung roads di ba? So finalo talaga nila yung Zionist na thinking na hindi talaga kami pwede maki-assimilate sa inyo. Kaya doon kayo dumaan. No, eventually mapapagod kayo. Kung for example for example the Filipinos, 'di ba? We have frustrations dito sa country natin. Poor na mga facilities, poor na mga government offices, poor hospitals, transportation sucks, grabe lala yung traffic, especially sa Manila. Dito sa Mindanao hindi masyado ganito yung mga problema namin, especially kung nasa Manila ka, ang dami mong pwedeng ireklamo, baha, traffic, init, dikit-dikit na mga bahay, basura sa kung saan-saan. So ma-frustrate ka as a Filipino, diba? And you would probably a lot of us are already migrating to other countries, yung mga nakaka-afford. And those problems are not malicious, no? I don't think they are. They're just yung katangahan lang talaga ng mga leaders natin, no, ng mga kawatan na nagnanakaw. I don't think it's a result of them, our leaders discriminating us para ma-drive away nila tayo, para umalis na tayo dito sa bansa. I don't think that's their intention. Resulta lang yan sa kapalpakan ng government natin, kaya gusto na nating mag-migrate. Pero dito parang intentional, no? Ginagawa nilang pangit yung way of living ng mga Palestinians para they don't have to take over their houses, they would just have to fucking leave. No, I think that's the plan.
They're used to control Palestinian pedestrian or vehicular movement. And the idea behind a checkpoint is more or less what you might experience like at a border crossing, where you go, you stand in line, you show your ID, you answer a couple questions, maybe open up your bag. One of the main differences with checkpoints in the Palestinian territories, as you can see from this map of the permanent checkpoints installed in the West Bank, those little blue things, is that the vast majority of these checkpoints are not located around the border of the West Bank, but actually the vast majority of them are located internally within the Palestinian territory.
I don't think the Luzon people na-imagine itong mga checkpoints. Kasi dito sa Mindanao, may mga checkpoints kami dito, but they're not really a hassle, no? I actually have a friend na appreciate pa nga ang mga checkpoints. They feel safe because of the checkpoints. And the checkpoints in Mindanao are located at the boundary. Yun na nga sinabi ng babae. Usually daw ang checkpoint sa boundary ng mga kanya-kanyang mga city. So for example, ganyan yan dito sa sa Mindanao. Kapag lalabas ka na ng Butuan, merong checkpoint. At hindi nga manned yan hindi nga usually manned, walang tao nga pero typically you have checkpoints upon checkpoints if you cross. I don't see that anywhere sa Luzon. Nung pumunta ako ng San Fernando, wala akong napapansin. Siguro natulog ako sa bus, no? Pero wala akong masyadong napapansin na checkpoint from Manila to San Fernando, or nakapunta nga ako sa sa very far north na, doon sa vegan. Wala akong naalalang may mga checkpoints kaming mga in-stop over eh. Pero how frustrating would it be if nandito ka sa, for example, dito sa Palestine na nasa internal yung mga checkpoints, hindi sa boundary. So every barangay may checkpoint. Ganito ba? Let's continue.
Namely most of them between Palestinian towns and villages. And what this means for a Palestinian person who's living, let's say, just south of Hebron in the south of the West Bank, who wants to travel, 30 miles north to the city of Bethlehem, which is a little bit more towards Jerusalem. So 30 miles, that should take a person under normal circumstances like 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour tops. Well, it's very likely to take that Palestinian person anywhere from 2 hours to 4 hours, to 8 hours, to maybe even an entire day to travel just those 30 miles because of the number of times that he or she would be stopped along the way at these checkpoints. And well, this is obviously very frustrating. People are spending hour after hour, day after day at these checkpoints to get from any one place to another. But beyond just being sort of a frustration, these checkpoints are extremely disabling to Palestinian daily life, to all aspects of Palestinian daily life. For example,
it's a very smart way, no? It's a very smart way to conquer a nation in this way, no? To occupy a nation in this way. Kasi dati ang ginagawa is hinhurt eh. Tayo mga Pilipino, sinasaktan tayo ng mga Kastila, sinisipa or ano pa, yung ginawa tayong hayop, no? And kaya nag-alsa, no? Na drive away ang mga mananakop. Pero dito, hindi ganoon yung ginagawa. Hindi ka naman binabackstroke ng pulis eh. Hindi ka naman tinitaser eh. Hindi ka naman pinapatay eh. Wala namang binabaril eh. Pinapahirapan ka lang. No, it's a torture kind of thing. Imagine, wala namang rason para i-stop mo ako. Pupunta lang naman ako sa grocery. Typical na 30 minutes na grocery, nagiging 8 hours. Kasi ilang checkpoints ang dadaanan ko. No, napaka-nonsense talaga.
These checkpoints make it very difficult for a Palestinian person to hold a steady job. It's never clear if it's going to take you 10 minutes or 3 hours to commute from your little village to the nearest city. Similarly, attending classes on a regular basis is pretty much impossible. Unless you happen to have a university in your little village, higher education is basically out of the question. So beyond just being sort of an annoyance or a burden, these checkpoints are preventing Palestinians from earning a living and from getting an education. Beyond that, getting to a marriage, a funeral, graduation, going to visit your family, all aspects of daily life are affected. And I don't know, imagine if you, every time you wanted to go to work or to school or to church or wherever else you were going, that you had to go through a series of checkpoints that held you up for 2-3 hours. How would that affect your life? And maybe that gives you sort of a glimpse of how disabling these checkpoints have become to Palestine.
How would that affect your life? How would that affect your sanity, man? No, nababaliw na nga tayo sa kabubuhan ng mga senator natin at saka mga politiko. Hindi naman tayo naaapektuhan directly. Eto sila naaapektuhan daily. No, gusto lang nilang pumunta sa church nila or sa school nila, sa trabaho nila. And these are the things that are blocking. No? And for many years they tried to live that kind of life. Ginagawa nilang normal ang hindi normal sa atin. Imagine, put yourselves in that shoe. Hindi ka ba magiging terorista kung ganun? Hindi ka ba mabaliw at pumatay na lang? No? A lot of them tried the peaceful way. No, kaya hindi ako na-surprise noong October 7 eh. Sinabi ko nga doon sa comment doon sa Facebook ko. No, hindi surprising. It is inevitable. Mangyayari yun. Kasi imagine, kung ako, for example, rapist ako, and may nire-rape akong batang babae. Masusurprise ka ba? Masusurprise ba ako kung sasaksakin ako ng batang babae na yon sa leeg ko na natutulog ako? Hindi yun surprising, di ba? It's inevitable. It is expected. Papatayin ako nun. Of course, hindi naman lahat ng tao killer na may killer instinct or pumapatay, may iba tumatakas at tumatakbo. What I'm saying is hindi lahat ng tao kaya yung peaceful way, no? Pinush mo sila sa edge, eh. Ano ba ang gagawin nila? Magja-jump off sa edge. Some will fight back, no? And we have to again contextualize ano ang history ng Jew, ba't napunta sila dito, ba't napunta sila ang inabuso for many times throughout history, and eto sila ngayon, sila na ang abuser. Ito ba dapat ang cycle? Ito ba inevitable ba din ito sa kanila? Am I ironic ba na I'm questioning na inevitable na ang isang Hamas sa isang Israel? So, nagiging ironic ba na inevitable din lang isang Israel sa isang society, sa isang mundo na puno ng hatred at discrimination sa kapwa?
Palestinians just sort of on a daily basis. This is the checkpoint outside of the city of Nablus. It's called Huwara. And we were there doing checkpoint watch, where we basically document what's happening at these checkpoints. And on this day, the rule was the following. Women were allowed through the checkpoint, older men were allowed through the checkpoint, and young boys were also allowed through the checkpoint. But any men between the ages of 15 and 40 weren't. Period.
So there are daily pa na mga changes sa mga rules, no? Na allowed kayo dito kasi meron siguro dito sa Butuan, pag may nanakawan ng motor, expect na merong checkpoint mamaya doon sa kalsada na yun, kasi the intention is to ma-apprehend or makuha yung motor ng ninakawan. Madakip yung magnanakaw, that's the point, no? And I think ito may mga siguro may mga instances na may mga away, and ito yung parang punishment sa kanila, no? Na okay, pwede kasi yung perpetrator is 15 years old to 45 years old, then lahat ng babae pwede, ikaw pwede, pero 15 to 45 hindi pwede. So imagine ganoon yung mga klase. Imagine kung dito yan sa Butuan na ang magnanakaw is 15 to 45 years old, hindi ka pwedeng magmotor. Ilagay mo yung motor mo sa gilid kasi may magnanakaw na 45 years old. Diba? It's absurd.
It didn't matter where you were coming from, it didn't matter where you were going, it didn't matter who you were, it didn't matter if it was an emergency. If you were Palestinian male, 15 to 40 years of age, you couldn't get home or to work or to school or to the hospital or wherever you were going. And so they gathered here, literally hundreds of Palestinian men in this ditch next to the checkpoint, in hopes that the rule would change at some point. And at one point I saw two of them go off to the side with trash bags, frantically trying to fill them up, and I asked them, why are you suddenly picking up trash? And they told me that the soldiers had actually given them the trash bags and told them that if they were able to fill up their trash bags with trash, then they would be allowed through the checkpoint. Health violations are another major issue.
Parang mga hayop, no? Pinagpa-power tripan ng mga military. Kaya ano kayo dyan? Maglinis kayo. Diba?
These checkpoints and in the occupation in general. Here you can see a Palestinian green and white plated ambulance that's pulling over to the side of a road to allow yellow plated Israeli vehicle privilege priority on that road. And these ambulances will sometimes wait for hours before reaching the checkpoints themselves. And when they get there, they're oftentimes not sort of rushed through quickly, but actually held at gunpoint, as you can see in this photograph, while another soldier will go around the back to sort of screen through the back of the ambulance. And the reasoning given for holding up ambulances oftentimes even longer than average civilian vehicles is that apparently in the past these ambulances have been used to transport weapons or people wanted by the Israeli government. And well, I've done a little research on the subject and discovered that actually there is one documented case of a Palestinian ambulance being abused for these purposes.
Diba? There's one ambulance na in-abuse, ginawang tagikarga ng mga armas. One instance lang daw, and suddenly every other ambulances are subject to these checkpoints. So in a way parang reasonable, no? Kung talagang you are in fear of your security, of your own life, it sounds reasonable to doubt na baka mga ano yan, mga terorista yan, tsaka patayin kami. Pero grabe naman, no? Emergency vehicles, they are a priority dito sa bansa natin. Kapag narinig natin yung ambulance, nagsasegue tayo pa kanan para makadaan sila. Pero dito hindi eh. No, pinapahintay yung mga pinapahintay yung mga ambulance.
But even if they were being used for these purposes, even if that was the case, remember that this Palestinian ambulance is traveling from a Palestinian village to a Palestinian city. It's not traveling from the West Bank.
That's a good point, no? Kung yung Palestinian na town to another Palestinian town. So even if they are terrorist groups, no, which you can easily identify, hindi mo naman kailangan i-hold yan. Madali lang naman i-verify kung kung may dala yan or wala. Kailangan pa talagang i-hold ng ilang hours, no? Pang-iipit talaga. So even if they are carrying firearms, it's traveling from one Palestinian town to another. It's not traveling from one Palestinian town to an Israeli town.
Into Israel, and that is where these checkpoints are located, between Palestinian built-up areas, such that in what way is holding up this ambulance endangering the lives of the people in back of it? In what way is this contributing to the safety or the security of the Israeli population, let alone the entire Palestinian population? This is the checkpoint outside of the village of Deir Balut, where I spent some time, and this checkpoint is open from 7 in the morning until 7 at night. What that means is that if you have any kind of an emergency between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., well, you're kind of out of luck. And in fact, what happened was that a woman from the village who was 7 months pregnant with twins began to have contractions at 1 o'clock in the morning. Her husband drove her frantically to the checkpoint, which they needed to cross to reach the nearest hospital in the city of Ramallah, an hour away. They got to the checkpoint, and the soldiers who sleep above it came down to meet them and were very polite. And they said, look, the rule is very clear. Palestinians are not allowed through until 7 in the morning. Please come back at 7. Well, the woman obviously couldn't wait 6 hours to have her babies, and so they argued a bit more. And the soldiers, again, they were very polite and even apologetic, and they just kept saying the same thing over and over again. They said, look, we didn't make the rules. We don't even agree with them. We're just following orders. We're just following orders. This is something I hear from soldiers almost daily. We're just following orders, and that's exactly what the soldiers were doing. At that point, the husband decided to call an ambulance to come from Ramallah City, an hour away, to the checkpoint, so that all it would take would be for his wife to walk by foot from her own vehicle across the checkpoint to the ambulance. Ambulance arrives an hour later, and the soldiers come down shaking their heads, and they say, look, it doesn't matter if you're going by foot or by car, you're still Palestinian, it's still the middle of the night, you still can't cross. At that point, they're sort of tearing their hair out, and the husband decides to call all of his friends, and he, like many Palestinians, had actually worked in Israel, speaks Hebrew, and was able to contact an Israeli friend that had a connection to the army that was high enough such that they were able to get this woman permission to cross the checkpoint and to get to the hospital. The soldiers allowed her through. They wouldn't allow her husband to go with her. She got to the ambulance and immediately began to give birth to the twins, and the twins were born, both of them alive, and basically healthy, except of course that they were 2 months premature. And because they were premature, they were in desperate need of hospital attention. And because they were an hour away on a bumpy road in the middle of the night, having waited almost 2 hours at the checkpoint, they weren't able to reach the hospital in time. And because of this, both of this woman's babies died. And I tell this story not because it's heartbreaking and not because I'm trying to demonize these soldiers. Look, I believe in the Nuremberg principles, that people are responsible for their actions even if they are following orders. That said, what I think is the greatest crime of all is not so much the acts of the individual soldiers who might be nicer or meaner, but the system itself. The fact that things are structured this way such that there are even soldiers there to begin with who control whether or not a person can go to the hospital. That to me is the greatest crime. Like I said, this is the checkpoint outside of the village of Deir Balut. The village itself is sort of over to the left of the photograph, and there is a direct road from the village to the checkpoint, but villagers aren't allowed to use it. And that's because there's something called roadblocks on it. And roadblocks are, like you see here, often concrete cubes placed on Palestinian roads to prevent Palestinians from being able to use their vehicles on their roads. So what these roadblocks mean, for example, for the village of Deir Balut, is that instead of taking a half-mile paved road from their village to the checkpoint every morning on their way to work or to school, they have to take a 3-mile unpaved detour all the way around through the countryside to reach the exact same spot. What does this mean for them? More time, more stress, more wear and tear on their vehicles, more money for gas. And again, this question of security, right? These institutions, the checkpoints, the roadblocks, are supposed to be there for the security and safety of the Israeli population, to prevent terrorism. In what way are these roadblocks securing anybody? Forcing Palestinians to take this long detour. How much is this about security, and how much is this about control? Some roadblocks are made with dirt, and you can see these villagers on the right here are coming home from work. They live on the other side of the roadblock, so what they have to do every morning is that they drive their car.
I'd confess, no, kung ako ang isang Palestinian dito, isa na ako sa mga terrorist. Promise yan. Kasi hindi ako mabait na tao eh. I'd be one of the terrorists, man. If ito yung quality of life na binibigay sa akin, and we've exhausted everything to fight back. Fight back meaning meron na kaming ginawang mga rally, 'di ba? Magiging terorista ako, ganito.
To the roadblocks, park them, walk around by foot, and take a taxi the rest of the way to work or to school, and repeat the process coming home. So these roadblocks prevent something as basic as Palestinians taking their vehicles from their house to their work or to school. And finally, these roadblocks are extremely disabling to the Palestinian economy. As you can imagine, transporting goods from one end of the land to the other is not a trivial process given all of these checkpoints and roadblocks. So basically, a truck that's carrying Palestinian goods, when it reaches a roadblock, has to sort of turn around and back up against the roadblocks, get another vehicle to come from the other end and turn around and back up from that end. And somebody has to actually manually transport these goods from one end of the roadblock to the other.
Ito yung hindi ko masyadong ma-relate kasi hindi naman ako nasa field eh. Hindi ako field personnel eh. Nasa bahay lang ako nagtatrabaho. And I don't know ano kaya ang mafe-feel ng mga taong nagtatrabaho at mga ganito, nagta-transport ng goods. And ito yung proseso na may roadblock. So in order for them to cross the roadblock nagbabaking yung na may bit-bit na mga goods, at saka meron siyang ka-communicate na nasa kabilang roadblock, and manually ita-transfer nila para maka-cross yung goods. So grabe na pang-iipit, grabe na pang-iipit talaga. It will drive you crazy. Now why are we being punished kung merong mga grupo na nagfa-fight back? Now, these groups, I think, are already frustrated and want to fucking kill Jews. Kasi eto na nga, frustrated na sila. And because they've done some horrendous acts, eto, ang punished is yung citizens na wala namang ginagawa. Namuhay lang naman dyan sa Palestine. No? Roadblocks upon roadblocks na
as you see in these photographs. And well, the products are not always office equipment. They could be produce, perishables, things that go bad by the time they reach their destination, and they could be desperately needed medical supplies. Beyond just taking a long time, this whole process renders a lot of these Palestinian products much more expensive than they otherwise would be because of the extra manpower and vehicular power that's required to transport them. What happens then is that a lot of these Palestinian products end up being even more expensive than their Israeli counterparts, which are very easy to transport on the Israeli-only.
Pa yung economical na war, no? Yung goods ng mga Palestinians is more expensive than the Israeli can offer. So businesses will die. Palestinian small businesses will die. They can't operate. And so talagang nakaplano, no? It's they don't want They don't want, they're driving these people away through pang-iipit, through, yeah, they're not physically driving them away, they're not killing them, they're not pushing them away, pinapahirapan nila. And that's way worse, man. Tinutorture mo ng ilang years, that's way worse.
Roads. What happens then, of course, is that the Palestinian market is then flooded with Israeli products, which Palestinians, many of them struggling to make ends meet, end up purchasing instead of supporting their own economy, supporting the very country that is occupying them. And settlements are the next part of my talk. Settlements.
They are supporting, even diba tayo support lokal, no? Gusto man sana sumuporta ng mga local na mga Palestinian sa kapwa nila Palestinian, and gusto man sana nilang suportahan ng kapwa nila, hindi nila magawa kasi yun na nga, sobrang mahal ng goods ng Palestinian products because of the system that Israel has created, and doon sila bumibili sa mga Israeli products kasi mas mura, na sa mga mananakop sila bumili. Yeah, what's your other option, no? Magutom, mamatay na lang.
The territories are essentially communities of Jewish Israelis who are living on Palestinian land. And they may be sort of villages, towns, cities. Here's a rather large one near Bethlehem and Jerusalem. And again, all of this land here is Palestinian land. It belongs to the Palestinians. It's internationally recognized as Palestinian land. And yet there's this city that's been built on top of it that is exclusively for Jewish Israelis. Well, what does this mean? You know, who gets to live in that city? Well, I could live in that city, right? Because I'm Jewish. I would just have to fill out an application. I could move there next week if I wanted to. And yet the farmers, the Palestinians that own the land that the city was built on, aren't allowed to live in it. Now, this process is nothing new. It's happened throughout history, all over the world, and there's a name for it. It's called colonization. And it's interesting that in English and in Hebrew we have this kind of benign word, settlements, whereas in many languages, like French, for example, these settlements are called colonies, and that's exactly what they are. And they are illegal, according to international law, which prohibits an occupying power from transferring citizens from its own territory to the occupied territory, which is exactly what Israel's doing. Instead of working against the system, though, Israel actually promotes it, as you can see in this photograph, which shows a billboard on an Israeli-only road in the Palestinian territories, and it basically says, it's in Hebrew, it says, now more than ever, and underneath it says, basically, if you come to our community, to Ariel, which is a settlement, if you come to live in Ariel, you will be rewarded with 100,000 Israeli shekels. That's more than $20,000 US. In other words, the Israeli government is actually paying its own citizens to move from Israel proper to the occupied territories to become part of the illegal occupying population. And what's particularly interesting to me about this billboard is who is it targeting? You know, who are going to be the Israelis who uproot their families to go live on this foreign land because it's cheaper to do so?
Imagine if merong ganoon na klase na opportunity for us Filipinos, no, na sasabihin sa government natin na wait, sorry, may ginawa ng ganyan dati si Marcos meron siyang in-uproot, merong ganun klase na advertisement na sa time ni Marcos na kung kayo mga taga Luzon ititira kayo dito sa Mindanao, some part sa Mindanao, magiging sa inyo na yung lupa. And we will give you some I forgot the exact details, no, pero yun po ang simula ng gera dito sa Mindanao. Nagsimula ang conflict because of that na ginawa ni Marcos, no? Nagpaulan siya dito ng mga tao na pinasettle niya sa Mindanao. Illegally nagsettle dito sa Mindanao, hindi naman sa kanila yung lupa, agawan ng lupa. And suddenly, nadisturbo ang small na community dito ng mga Muslim and mga Moro and mga tawag doon, mga indigenous people dito sa parts ng Mindanao. Yun na nga, kasi may nagdagsa ang tao, hindi ka ba madidisturbo kung ilang thousands of people suddenly coming into your area, grabbing some of your land, or kanang tawag doon, naggawa ng sudden na bagong business na kukompetensya sa'yo, mga bagong tao, mga bagong beliefs. So yun po ang conflict na simula dito sa Mindanao. Hindi talaga maganda na i-uproot mo and move mo yung tao sa isang area na merong naka-occupy. Hindi yun tama. may law pala doon na sa Geneva Convention.
Is it going to be well-off, wealthy, established Israeli families? No, they want to live in Tel Aviv. The families who end up taking advantage of these offers are going to be low-income Israelis, poor Israelis, recent immigrants from Africa, from Eastern Europe.
That's why you can see a lot of Jews na will really support Israel, no? Kasi ito yung ginagawa ng Israel, eh. Binibili nila yung tao nila. They have the power, they have the machinery, they have the resources back. Meron pa nga silang pera galing sa US, eh. So they can do this kind of stuff, no? They can buy you as a Jew, not us as a Filipino, kasi wala naman silang pake sa atin. But if you're a poor Jew and ino-offeran ka na, dito ka tumira sa isang wasteland, not wasteland kasi may mga farmers, eh. Dito ka tumira sa isang inagaw natin na lupa, bibigyan ka namin ng pera. Imagine, sino bang aayaw doon? Ilang milyon yun, eh. Diba? That's why they will protect Israel to the death, kasi yun na nga, ito yung mga advantage na bibigay ng the Israeli government sa kanila, no? Pinapagawa sila ng mga illegal na bagay, kagaya na lang ng pagsettle sa isang lupa na illegal yun, eh, diba?
And in fact, a lot of these settlements, Ariel included, are populated primarily by immigrants who've moved to the territories, not because they say this land is ours and nobody else's, but because they're looking for a higher standard of living. And these financial offers can be very appealing. People who take advantage of them will get nice housing, oftentimes with mortgages subsidized by the government. There are parks for their kids to play in, strip malls, swimming pools, and a place where water is so precious. A nice offer, right? Again, all of this built illegally on Palestinian land. At this point, there are settlements all over the West Bank. The red dots in this map indicate where you have an illegal Jewish-only colony built on Palestinian land. And of course, coming along with the settlements and colonies is the road network. And here you can see it's just a handful of them, but the way those blue roads and highways really chop up, compartmentalize that Palestinian landscape. Remember, of course, that these roads were built illegally on Palestinian land, and that the Palestinians owning the land that they were built on, for the most part, aren't even allowed to use them because of the segregated road system.
So, sila ang gumawa ng kalsada. Israel ang nagpagawa ng mga kalsada. Let's analogize this one. Let's say ang taga Manila, the Manila government ang nag-finance sa kalsada sa Butuan illegally. Hindi kami nag-agree na sila ang gumawa. Pero ginawa pa din nila yung mga kalsada. Okay, meron na yung mga kalsada nandito na sa Butuan, except that I can't use that road only for Manileños. Imagine that kind of scenario. No, meron ng road sa tabi ng bahay mo, but you can't use it, only Manileños can. Kasi galing sa kanila yung pera, eh. Sila nagpagawa, eh. In the first place, hindi naman kami nag-agree na magpagawa ka ng road dyan na hindi naman kami kasali. No, magpagawa ka ng road, kayo mag-finance, pero dapat kami din, makagamit din kami dyan. Pero hindi, no? That's what's happening here. The Israel government, because they have the money, they have the power, they illegally create roads, and those roads are only for the Jewish people, not for the Palestinians.
The next part of my talk is on outposts, which are similar to settlements in that they are incidents of Jewish Israelis living illegally on Palestinian land. One of the main differences are the people who choose to live in these outposts. So I talked before about what I call economic settlers, moving to the territories for financial benefits, and they represent about 80% of the settler population, a vast majority that says, according to polls, that they would be willing to leave if they were offered financial compensation. So when Israel says it's impossible to make all of these hundreds of thousands of settlers leave, remember that the vast majority are there simply because the government is paying them to do so. The remaining 20% of the settler population are often called ideological settlers, moving to the territories not for money, but because of their beliefs. And many of them believe that the land in the West Bank and Gaza belong.
Aside from the economical aspect na pwedeng mag-move ang isang Jew from their place to a settlement or colonized na area, meron ding mga ganito na belief talaga nila. I remember there's may vlog sa sa YouTube na nag-travel siya sa Israel. Meron pa I forgot. But merong part I don't know, I don't exactly remember kung anong part 'yun ng Palestine, but there's this part na maraming Muslim, and yung vlogger is Muslim. So comfortable siya, naglalakad doon sa mga tindahan, na nag-hi siya sa mga tindero, and may pinoint siya na isang tindahan daw na pag-alaman na meron palang underground yung tindahan na yon. Ang mismong tindero ang nakadiscover na meron underground, and that underground leads to a mosque, no? And narinig yon ng mga Jew and gustong bilhin yung store niya, no? So ang ginawa para ipitin talaga siya na ibenta, ma-force siyang maibenta, is parang may mga inipit siya through taxes para magbayad siya ng mga higher na taxes. Ang ganun yung ginawa sa Muslim na yun, pero hindi siya nag-back down talagang pinotektahan niya yung tindahan, yung area niya, para hindi niya maibenta. Pero maraming Jew ang gustong bilhin yun para doon mag-settle. And then meron ding isa doon na force talagang ibenta yung tindahan niya, and sabi niya na hindi daw yun mga normal na Jew, mga extremist daw yun, kasi usually yung mga extremist na Jews, which are the Zionists, they will live in a community na napapalibutan sila ng mga Muslim. Ganoon sila ka-extreme. Imagine, kaya mo bang tumira sa isang lugar? For example, ako, atheist ako, kaya ko bang tumira sa isang lugar na alam kong papatayin ako or delikado yung pagka-atheist ko sa community na yun? Ayoko, di ba? That's what these kinds of Jew are doing, no? Wala mang harm na ginagawa sila, it's just the fear na napalibutan sila ng mga Muslim, pero they will risk their own lives, no, because they have this ideology, no, na it's their belief ba na once ma-occupy nila ito, eventually madadrive out nila itong yung mga community of Muslims, and eventually sila ang dadami and madadrive out nila ang mga Muslim or mga Christians.
Comes to the Jewish people for oftentimes religious reasons or maybe political reasons. And according to many of these people, the Palestinians are the ones who are occupying this land, Jewish land. And so they will actually come in the middle of the night with trailers and simply establish themselves on a plot of Palestinian land and say, we're not leaving, this land belongs to us. Well, a farmer wakes up the next morning and there's an outpost on his land, and while the Israeli government says that it doesn't condone this kind of practice, it doesn't do a whole lot to prevent the settlers from coming or to make them leave. And so over time, these outposts begin to grow. More settlers move into them. Eventually, they want a school for their children. They want a fence around them for security.
Ikaw na nakikinig dito, hindi ka ba mababaliw pag ganito yung mangyayari sa'yo? Hindi ka ba magiging demonyo? Hindi ka ba papatay? So I'd fucking kill, man. Ito yung ginagawa sa akin. Ito yung ginagawa sa pamilya ko, yung ginagawa sa neighbors ko, sa sa nation ko, binabasura, binababoy nyo kami dito. Hindi nyo nire-respeto yung rights namin. Wala na kaming rights. Kayo, sobra-sobra yung rights na binibigay sa inyo. Walang nangyayari, walang accountability sa inyo na part. Kami, grabe. Naglagay lang kayo ng isang maliit na room. Suddenly, naging ano kayo? Naging village. Diba? Sino ba ang hindi mababaliw sa ganitong klaseng pang-iipit?
They want a road to connect them to Israel, and over time what you have is it's no longer an outpost, it's a new settlement. And that's the way a lot of these settlements were originally founded and grew into what they are today. And once they become settlements and recognized by the Israeli government as such, they become subsidized by the Israeli government, which means subsidized by the U.S. government, by us. The U.S. government gives Israel between...
Imagine, no? Subsidized pa ng taxpayers' money.
3 and 5 billion American tax dollars every year. That's more than $10 million every single day. That is going towards upholding these illegal practices. And, you know, this may seem like something kind of on the other side of the world, has nothing to do with us as Americans, but we are the ones paying for this. You know, we have a right, we have a responsibility to know where our tax dollars are going and to ensure that they are not being used to violate human rights, international law, and even U.S. law. Here's a few pictures of outposts. This one is above the village of Yanun, and oftentimes they're placed on hilltops for sort of strategic reasons. Here's the village of Yanun, a Palestinian village of about 300 people. Here's one of the homes in the village, and again you can see up top there the outpost. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the settlers living in these outposts don't really think the Palestinians have any right to be where they are. And so they'll actually come down with large weapons even to try and threaten the villagers, to try to make them leave their homes and land. And here's a picture of one of these armed settlers that's come down to threaten a villager picking her olives. In the past, these settlers have beaten up numerous villagers. They've poked a young boy's eye out of his face. They've beaten an old woman with her walking stick. They've killed a villager. They've stolen olives. Keep in mind, of course, that Palestinians in this part of the world are not allowed to have any kind of weapons. Now, clearly, some Palestinians do manage to get weapons. We hear about it in the media, but the vast majority of Palestinians don't. They don't have anything to defend themselves with besides stones or their bodies. Meanwhile, Israeli soldiers and civilians, these settlers, are oftentimes carrying around these large weapons. So that's the kind of balance of power that you feel going into the territory.
Hindi ka ba magiging terrorista kung ganito? Hindi ka ba mababaliw kung ganito yung mundo mo? You were just living peacefully sa farm mo. Yun nga, pangit nga yung farm niya eh. Hindi, wala ngang any kind. Sabi nga nung settler, di ba? Yung first na settler, muds and sticks and stones lang yung mga. Ito yung mga klaseng taong mga dinidisturbo mo na walang pakialam sa buhay ng iba. Na buhay lang sila sa simpleng buhay nila. Nasa farm lang. They don't know anything, no? Parang nakatira sila sa past eh. And ito yung mga dinidisturbo mo, mga walang kalaban-laban, walang armas. Hindi nga siguro sila educated kasi yun nga yung mga checkpoints, hindi sila educated. They're just living their peaceful life at eto kayo, no, with your high powered na mga machine guns. Sino bang hindi mababaliw? Sino bang hindi sasali sa mga armed groups kung yun na lang ang option?
The settlers have burned the village generator so that the Yanun villagers didn't have any more electricity. And this is the Yanun water source where settlers have come down. They've urinated in the water source. They've poisoned it with dead chickens, anything to try to make the villagers leave. And at the end of 2002, the village of Yanun came together to make a decision about this issue, all 300 of them. Well, the international and Israeli peace communities heard about what had happened in Yanun and went to the villagers staying in a nearby town with an offer. And what we said was, if you choose to return to your homes and your land, we will commit to maintaining a constant presence of international and Israeli peace activists to live with you in your community for as long as you want us there. We will bear witness to these crimes. We will document them, try to get them into the media. We will stand beside you in solidarity should those settlers attack. And about a third of the villagers accepted our offer and have come back to their homes, almost up 100 of them, and living along with them now are these international and Israeli peace activists. And this is a picture of one of those activists. His name's David. He's a friend of mine. And David was actually the victim of a particularly brutal settler attack in which he was beaten to a pulp in his face, which shows that the settlers will attack not only Palestinians, but internationals and Israelis who are there in solidarity with those farmers. But David continues to do wonderful work in the Palestinian territories. He's recovering, and he is a citizen of Israel, a Jewish Israeli, and one of many Israeli activists that I've had the privilege to work with in Palestine. Now, it's very important for people to distinguish between what it means to be Jewish, someone from the Jewish religion or culture, like.
So hanggang dito lang siguro muna, no. Ipopost ko to, and let me know if you want to continue with this, and let's watch this together.